All right, can you see my screen, Graham?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Awesome.
Okay, I just want to check the lobby, make sure got everyone coming in. Okay, I think yeah, I think we can kick off. Let's do it. Yeah, welcome everyone. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us on the webinar today for, or sorry, should I say the mini masterclass for AI enhanced decision making. Um, Today we have the, or should I say, I have the pleasure of really kind of introducing someone who's no stranger to the Masterstart family, and that's Devaan Parbhoo. Um, yeah, and let me just give you a little bit of context, should you not know who Masterstart is, just a little bit about what we do, and then I'll hand over to Devaan. So I think just to set some house rules, guys, if everyone can just please keep their microphones off. I'm going to monitor the chat, and Devaan's also going to kind of keep his eye on it. So please ask as many questions as you can. He'll cast his eye over it during the session and try address it on the fly. Alternatively, I'll pick it up and kind of raise them as we get to the end of the mini masterclass. I think yeah, please, this is one to really pay attention to. I really encourage you guys to all be focused. This is a really hot topic at the moment, to really hard how we can elevate generative AI in our day to day, especially in our work. And should you have to jump off any time, we are recording it. I will be sharing this post event with everyone via email. So you definitely have it for listening to later on. So, for those who aren't sort of accustomed to Masterstart is, we are a leading edtech business that creates, builds, and delivers competency-based skills online training solutions for, as you see there, organizations that are seeking flexible, innovative, and impactful, scalable training to solve business challenges. I think, what we do is we offer 6 to 12 week competency-based online short courses. We have a diverse portfolio of courses that really cover multiple themes, from functional, which AI enhanced decision making would fall part of, as well as risk management, advanced risk management, through to leadership and management, as well as some executive based courses, which are fairly new to our portfolio. I think what we're most proud of, and what we really try and kind of instill in our model and in our learning, is that the skills you'll learn are workplace applicable, and I think that's always a little bit misunderstood. And it's really around integrating practical workplace skills in every learning experience that someone will get within the courses that they do on a Masterstart program or course. So yeah, that's just a little bit about Masterstart. And I think what's really great is that we partner with some of the leading business schools and sort of tertiary institutions in South Africa, as well as one UK-based university. What makes us great is that they certify our courses based on them being all accredited based institutions. So as well as learning the skills, as well as learning workplace applicable skills, one is also able to get an academic certification from one of these institutions based on completion. So I think, to no further ado, let me just quickly introduce Devaan in a little bit more detail. So I think Devaan comes with a wealth of experience, right? So I'm not going to read verbatim there, but he's got a lot of experience when it comes to driving digital transformation across multiple kind of large scale businesses within South Africa specifically. He's one that wholeheartedly embraces technology. I think he lives, breathes it. And he's specifically at the moment really passionate about AI and tech, in general, and how that can really enable one's sort of not just the efficiency and the competitiveness around an individual, but also the team and the business itself. So really kind of taking AI, generative AI, and bringing that into our everyday, making it a co-worker, which is something he commonly refers to AI as a partner in our day to day. So let me keep quiet. Devaan, over to you, and hope everyone enjoys. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Graham. I appreciate it. Hope everyone can hear me clearly as well. So we're going to be discussing something extremely exciting, and I've been extremely passionate about. I've been following it since around about 2019. Just the leaps and bounds that this technology has grown over the last 5 or 6 years or so has really been eye-watering, so to speak. So I'd like to ask just two questions up front so I can get a lay of the land. I know we do have people from Liberty, we've got from ABSA, from Nedbank, from IBM, and a few other organizations on the call. So I'd like to understand exactly how often do you use Gen AI models? So you can just drop it in the chat there. Graham and I will have a look and see just how often do you use it? Do you use it maybe once a week, occasionally? You regularly use it, or are you someone like me that's got this on my phone? It's become my search engine, so to speak. I don't go to Google anymore because these models can now browse the web and then add the citation to understand exactly where it is. And often, as you understand SEO and search engine optimization, for some of us that might know, you pay for real estate, right? So when you're searching for something on Google, whoever's paid for the highest real estate, that's the result you'll see first. And that might not answer your question if you're searching, right? So for me, what's extremely what I'm really grateful for is the fact that these models now index the web and they're able to return sources for you, right? So maybe Graham, if you can just let me know exactly how often, what's the sort of the common theme around how people are leveraging Gen AI.
So
That'd be
we're actually
quite
getting
exciting to see.
quite a varied response. I'm seeing
Yeah,
actually
that's
quite
awesome.
an even split at the moment between daily, occasionally, really starting to really is starting to come up, and then occasionally, I think so. We're kind of hitting middle ground.
Yeah,
Um,
that's awesome.
Actually, quite a lot of adoption, which is great. I'm seeing
That's
daily.
fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And that's great because that helps me understand exactly, how best to sort of not necessarily customize the presentation because there are a few slides that are sort of locked into how we can help ourselves use these models to generate the output we desire. But just on that note around getting the output that you desire and prompting chatbot, how comfortable are you in using these generative AI models? So maybe just drop that in the chat again, right? How often, it's not how often, sorry, how comfortable are you in using the output maybe for work or for your personal life? Um, not a funny story, but really statistically speaking, I did some research on this to, you know, really understand exactly which geographies across the world are leveraging these models. And this is what's funny enough. Like, funny enough, Western nations are most reluctant to trust and accept rather artificial intelligence driven systems across both their private and their personal space, right? So it's not just in one aspect of their life. They're looking at their professional lives and their personal lives, and they're evaluating the level at which they can trust this information that it provides. And this might be related to some of an innate reluctance to relinquish personal information. And also then accept computer-driven algorithms as a replacement for, certain aspects of their work. But what's extremely exciting for me is that if you look at the BRICS nations, so Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, if you look at the BRICS nations, not necessarily in its expanded definition of those that recently joined us, but just in those that I've listed, we are most excited and most willing to trust and accept the output. And that for me is extremely interesting, right? Because one, we've used like the organizations have used Kenyans to train the models and to test for sort of the human responses. So um, that's interesting. And at some level, it's also a bit concerning, just based on the labor cost that they've actually charged. So that's a bit concerning for me. Um, but yeah, so maybe Graham, if what's the common theme coming through in the chat there at the moment around a
So we
willingness
get
and our ability to trust these outputs?
right. So we're getting a lot of very comfortable. So a lot of the people, a
Wow.
lot of our attendees have actually are very comfortable with using the tools, which is fantastic. Um,
Yeah.
the odd one that I've picked up is not very comfortable for work. Usually comfortable
Mm.
in personal lives, work a little bit more hesitant. One or two actually also just for guideline purposes. So yeah, actually, yeah, ranging from comfortable to not so much for work, should
It's
I say?
awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. So at some level, the research supports the conversation today as well, or the conversation rather supports the research, I should say, right? Based on just that, South Africans are more willing to accept and trust the output. I cannot fully understand the reasons for not necessarily trusting the output for work, because it requires very contextual data from your organization in order to use it. And then your organization's got its own security policies that limit or allow you to make use of these technologies within the firewall of your organization, right? So that's expected, I should say. So let's take a trip down memory lane. So between 2017, 2018, the introduction of the transformer, and rather 2018, the first generative AI model in GPT-Neo, trained on roughly around about 117 million parameters. And then we fast track all the way through to 2020, where that's when we really started to experience the GPT-3, the large language model, where it was able to compute in human-like conversation, or generate text rather in human-like conversation. But what's extremely fascinating is the fact that this was for the first time, this large language model had the ability to understand and understand, interpret, and generate content in that way, right? But prior to that, it was purely just around multitasking and dialogue systems, but it was trained manually. If you think of IBM Watson, you would have to train the output manually. And I have first-hand experience of training an IBM Watson language model. It's extremely admin intensive. And for those of us on the call that are from IBM, I'm pretty sure you are familiar with the nature of how admin intensive Watson originally was. In order to sort of index documents and then retrieve information in that format. Fast track into 2022, 2023, and 2024, where we have now GPT 4.0, which is a multimodal model where it's able to generate both text, visual, and also able to animate visuals as well, right? So that just gives us a pretty quick brief history. And what I thought that I wanted to do as well as we build towards using these models for decision making and to enhance our decision making as human beings, as we gravitate towards what I believe is a human AI partnership, or as Graham mentioned earlier, just using it as an assistant, excuse me, or your technology as your team member, as opposed to just a piece of technology. As we move towards that over the next couple of years, I want us to really understand exactly the genesis of intention around these models. And it was really to, first and foremost, to act as a RAG bot, right? To retrieval augmented generative capability to assist you in retrieving information, one. Secondly, around content generation. And I think this is where it really sets itself apart from the other type of automation technologies, right? That we're able to generate content and be creative in our writing, by partnering with technology to ensure that we get the output that's desirable for the context around which we desire the content to be generated upon. Thirdly, language translation. It's able to translate. It was the intention was to ensure that we can translate language quite easily. And then lastly, around education and learning, which I think is an absolute. I think that this industry is exploding. It has been ramping up over the last, I would say, decade, with the advent of e-learning and kind of Adobe Flash initially, and then from there over to HTML5, and how online learning has grown. And I think that the opportunity that lies ahead of us with the advent of generative AI in the education and learning sector is going to really be quite exponential. But then on the other side, on the other side of the coin, we've got some deviations that have taken place that have moved us away from the genesis of its intention, right? And one, it's around plagiarism and academic misconduct. Some users have exploited ChatGPT to generate academic papers, essays, and other assignments. I know of some friends of mine that have used generative AI to formulate certain sections of their dissertations. Um, and while some institutions have accepted that, and I think many institutions, academic institutions, have accepted it, it has to be your own work that it's indexing and then correcting or improving the writing style, as opposed to create content for my academic piece of work, right? And I think that's where the deviation is taken away from its intent. It's also, yeah, hackers have used this to create deception and to produce misinformation um, around certain products and certain aspects of the fabric in society, creating fake news and misleading content. Um, we've seen quite a bit of that on social media. That brings us to, the manipulation of information and social engineering, and it can be used for, social engineering attacks. There's a lot of cybersecurity that's currently taking place around this, and how people are using generative artificial intelligence for phishing and for vishing, because you can now create video content using generative artificial intelligence. If any one of us are football fanatics, you'll see what this has done to Gareth Southgate. And if you haven't seen AI videos of Gareth Southgate, I would encourage you to have a look. Some of it is hilarious. There's some vulgar language as well, but it just gives you this the picture around how online content can be manipulated by using generative artificial intelligence. That brings us to hate speech and harassment, amplifying hate speech around certain contexts in society and, in the media, online harassment and trolling of individuals and organizations by using offensive generative content. And then lastly, bias and stereotyping. And the application can be used inadvertently to produce bias and stereotypical content. And this is where it's important, right? It's based on the data that it's being trained upon. And that's where bias oftentimes come into play, right? You'll, if I'm not mistaken, it was in 2021 where a lot of bias was built into a financial algorithm or a finance and affordability of a particular sector of society. And it received a lot of flack, a lot of pushback um, from the users to say that, but listen, my affordability doesn't align with the current output. And as a result, that what data is this being trained on? Because they were informed, the users were informed that they were interacting with a large language model, and they pushed back quite a bit about against it, right? And it was because of inherent bias that has been built into how we've just worked over the years. And I think that is one of the aspects, if we think back to trusting the output and, willingness to accept the output from a large language model like ChatGPT or Perplexity AI. It's important to understand exactly what data has this been trained upon to ensure that I can really trust the output. And that's why when it comes to ensuring that we use generative AI as a decision-making protocol, it's important that we consider how we prompt the chatbots to ensure that we get the most desirable output that we want. And we limit stereotyping, we limit bias as much as humanly possible, or artificially generative, as largely as generative, artificially intelligently possible. That's a mouthful. So I'm going to take you through a few prompt frameworks, and I think that's going to help us really get to the most desirable output. And this will help you in work as well as in your personal lives as well. You can use the same frameworks, even though we're going to run through 3 use cases, one around marketing, another around social media, and then another around being a strategic advisor. They are all 3 different prompt frameworks that you can use to ensure that you get the most desirable output that you're looking for. And these are, once again, customizable to your context, right? So let's take a look at this here. So first, I've got a second screen on the right-hand side here. So if you see the side, you can have a look at my fade of my haircut most recently, right? So sorry about that. So firstly, let's look at the context, right? and this might be extremely relevant to us at the moment. A number of us work for financial institutions, and with these new privacy laws and POPI Act in play at the moment, also we understand that from a marketing point of view, we aren't able to use data of our customers without them providing consent to allow us to market to them. And therefore, let's provide the chatbot with the context that says, with the advent of new privacy laws, the use of third-party data for marketing purposes has become extremely increasingly restricted, right? What does that mean in terms of the background? Our organization's goal is to ensure that we can pivot to focus more on first-party data collection and utilization. So now, by giving it this background, you're also limiting it. You're limiting the large language model to only focus on a certain aspect, right? So you don't want it to create a framework around using third-party data, but rather using first-party data, only that which you've been given access to by the customers, right? Then you're providing an action. You're saying this will involve us, as in me, the human being, the warm body sitting behind prompting the chatbot. This will involve me setting up an efficient data collection framework on our own platforms, meaning our own organizational systems, and tailoring our marketing strategy to make the most of it, meaning the first-party data. Next up is to provide the chatbot with a scenario. And the scenario here is a shift in our strategy that is happening amidst the launch of a new product line that we're introducing next month. And you can set the time frame, right? It's important to provide a time frame so that the chatbot also knows, and you'll see on my next slide, the chatbot also knows when we follow the various steps to implement. How do we fit within this time frame, right? So you're putting together essentially a project plan at the same time by which you are gaining insight into what this framework could look like. And then lastly, you're providing it with a task. And the task is to develop a detailed plan for first-party data collection. Once again, that's the action, which incorporates the background as well. And usage options or recommendations in our upcoming marketing campaign. Right, so there you can see you're giving it enough context. You're not just asking it to provide a implementation plan for a marketing campaign around a new strategy for a new product line that we're introducing using first-party data. You've actually ran through the context, the background that your organization is focused on. You're giving it the action that you are responsible for producing as your KPI. You're then giving it the scenario around why it fits, why this action is important, and then lastly, you provide it with an action and a task rather around what it needs to do. And there you can see, right? So I've just taken a screenshot based on that prompt, and I've dropped it in. But there you can see, right? It's now understood the objective is to collect and utilize first-party data effectively for marketing purposes by ensuring compliance with the new privacy laws. And it's then identifying where you can go to collect your data sources, because if you're putting together a framework, your framework has to include your inputs. Where are you getting information from, and what are you going to do with that information, which is then step 4 rather than 3 around the implementation of technologies. And then lastly, the implementation plan. I'm very happy to share the complete output with you, which I'll do. I'll share that with Graham, and then he'll share it with all the participants thereafter. So you'll see the all 5 steps that I've received. You might, depending upon your subscription to either ChatGPT or to Claude or to Perplexity AI, your output might be slightly different. I've got the GPT Plus subscription. And if you have a similar and use that exact same prompt, you'll get this output here that I've received. Right? Graham, are there any questions before we move on to the next one? If there are any questions in the chat.
No, I think no questions so far.
Questions, awesome.
Yep.
Cool. So let's take a look at the second. So that's a typo. Let's take a look at the second decision-making framework. Right now, you can see I've limited the prompt to just task, action, and goal. And we can use the social media use case for this here, right? So the task we're giving it is to amplify your organization's engagement with your current audience on Instagram, right? So there you can see I'm narrowing down, I'm applying a restraint onto the prompt, right? I'm saying I want to increase my organization's engagement with the audience that I currently have on a particular platform, Instagram. You could, if you're active on TikTok, you could add TikTok or Facebook, or potentially even if you use Google, right? You want to increase your impression rate on Google. As far as your search engine optimization engagement is concerned, you could add that there, right? Excuse me. Next up, you're providing an action. And the action is to necessitate the launch of, or this rather necessitates the launch of user-generated content where customers share their personal fitness journeys while wearing our athletic product, using a unique hashtag. Like this could be, maybe some of us, we have someone on the call from Discovery, and it's, how do their personal fitness journey on Vitality Fitness, using the Apple Watch as part of that benefit, or any of the other Vitality Active Reward benefits that they have, and then using a unique hashtag that maybe we want to help, or we want to use in order to track our engagement across Instagram. And lastly, we give it a goal, and the goal is then to increase our Instagram engagement by 20%. So that's our KPI that we're looking to achieve by user-generated content submissions by 50% over the next quarter. So we've added another constraint in there. We're saying that we're looking for our users to create content which would up the overall content creation by 50% over the next 90 days, or 92 days rather, depending upon which month in the calendar you're at. But the other constraint is our objective, right? We want to increase our engagement rate by 20%. And there you can see, so I've scrolled slightly further down in the actual chat, or in the output. And there you can see, the implementation plan, what we can do to promote the campaign, like pre-launch teasers, use Instagram stories, posts, and reels to build anticipation for an official launch. So that's us as the organization creating content to build anticipation of the official launch that could, give the audience, our current users, a view around what they need to be doing. A launch announcement, maybe partnership with influencers in order to build collaboration, to ensure that we can increase reach and promote the campaign, right? And there you can see then the next step is then around engagement and moderation, to ensure that it's user-friendly content that we're creating and allowing our users to create as well. And then lastly, I think what's extremely important there is that the model has now given us a framework around things that we can do to monitor and analyze the data to ensure that we deliver against our KPIs, right? Our 20% engagement, and measuring whether we've actually achieved a 50% user-generated increase in content. Right, so that's the second use case that I wanted to run through. And then lastly, we've got what I believe is going to be extremely important is around how do we use these Gen AI models to help us problem solve, to help us define a particular issue, or then recommend and provide option choices for either for us around work, and for maybe if it's in the personal life, in our personal context and circumstances, if it's around us, maybe in my context, I'm married for 10 years this year. It's me asking the chatbot to give me options around what I can do for my wife for our 10-year anniversary. I'm hoping that it doesn't tell me to buy a diamond ring, but we'll see what it does. I haven't prompted it around their context yet. So this is a framework that I've used quite consistently at work. Um, and the prompt framework that I'm going to give you is one that has helped me get strategy signed off back at the workplace. It's helped me fine tune what I refer to as an A to B strategy, meaning that yeah, in 2023, I've had these KPIs. This is my baseline for where we currently are as an organization. And I've anonymized the data just for anybody that's on the call thinking, oh, he's used this organization's data. I've anonymized my organization's data so that it doesn't, get trained on a current employer, a current employer's, IP. And then, the B state is then where I want to move to. So how do I, if my B state, my future state is in 2025, then, what initiatives can I embark on today or over the next 3 years or 5 years, depending on where you are in that 5-year journey? What initiatives can I, kick off to ensure that I have a higher probability of achieving my B state? And that's something that's worked extremely well for me over the course of my career, specifically over the last 5 years, if I can call it that. And I'm going to give you that framework now, right? So I've given it a role. First and foremost, I've asked it to act as a strategic advisor that has worked as a senior strategy consultant in the likes of Gartner, McKinsey, Deloitte, KPMG. You can add onto that, right? Based on the organizations that you're, based on the big consulting firms that your organization works with consistently, so that you know that the output is going to be built along the frameworks which is accepted in your organization, right? I've also given it further context to say that you have experience in working projects across Western, European, and then also African continents, so that it now understands it needs to pull on experience and pull on articles that these organizations have published um, from different localities, right, different geographies, to ensure that it's most locally produced for the context of what I'm going to give it as the expectation. Excuse me. Second step is I've given it an action, right? I've asked it to suggest a set of high impact but low cost growth hacking, you know, you know, and high impact, low cost because we're in an economic circumstances in our country at the moment, as you are well familiar with, where our organizations are asking us to save cost but produce growth for the business. We've also got high levels of inflation in the economy at the moment, and therefore, we want to ensure that we use our budget that we gain access to and we have been entrusted within organizations wisely to ensure that we can have a low growth but high growth, low cost growth, but a low cost but high impact, benefits. Secondly, I've given it a bit of context, right? So we know that Amazon is coming or is here, sorry, in South Africa at the moment, and it's competing with the likes of Takealot. What I've done is to protect Takealot in this conversation. I've then just, blanked out the name of the organization, but Amazon has entered South Africa as a direct competitor for yours truly, and they're selling a wide range of products, ranging from electronic, appliances, books, and other lifestyle products. And yours truly company is looking to further cement its position in the market as a preferred online e-commerce marketplace for South Africans. I've been asked it to give me my expectations rather is that is a selection of practical and feasible growth hacking tactics tailored to the e-commerce industry and Company X, which can be implemented to acquire new customers and also retain our existing ones. And that's important because I would imagine that Takealot doesn't want to see an exodus of customers that go to Amazon to make use of their platform for purchasing, right? And then once again, you can see there, as I've spoken, I think I mentioned with the first use case, if you give it sufficient amount of time to be able to chunk up the implementation plan over a course of a few months, and because we've asked, we're just going to go one slide back, because we've asked for a series of, or a selection of practical and feasible growth hacking tactics, it's then given us an implementation plan that cuts across a 12-month 12-month period to ensure that we cement our position, continue to cement our position in the marketplace, attract new customers, but then also retain our existing ones, right? And there you can see it's given us ideas which we can take now and we can customize, right? And I think that's an extremely important point. I'm going to move on to my next slide, but it's an extremely important point because we often think that AI will fix work. And at the same time, while fixing work, there's this fear that it's going to replace jobs and replace people in the workplace. And I'm of the view that it's not going to replace people. It will replace work. It will replace these aspects of work that we hold on to that are just mundane. I've performed a series of process engineering activities in my current organization, but also in a previous organization. And it's alarming to me just how we've been conducting work in the same way for many a year, and just accepting it, right? But for the first time, we've got an opportunity to fix the mundane activities that we are actively involved in. And this is often referred to as digital debt, right? It's the flow of data, emails, meetings, and notifications that we just accept because it's the way we've configured work. But for the first time, what generative artificial intelligence can do, and this includes the likes of RPA, includes the likes of decision automation, and a few of the automation technologies that fit along the spectrum of artificial intelligence. But the rate of work has outpaced our ability to process information, and therefore, this rate of information that's flowing into our eyes as we sit behind these screens and in front of our mobiles, it's only going to intensify over the next month, the next 2 months, the next 6, 12 months, or 24 months, and so on. Everything just feels important, right? And I'm almost confident that everybody on this call right now can acknowledge that everything feels important. How do we segregate the difference between that? We need to ensure that we engineer how we perform work. We have to build a new relationship with our with work. But just to give you a little bit of data around what this digital debt means for us in terms of innovation, nearly 2 in 3 people, that's 64%, arguably say that they struggle with having time and energy to do their job. And those people are 3.5 times more likely to also struggle with innovation and strategic thinking. Why is that? Because the more you are involved in administrative tasks, you are unable to be involved in innovation or in creative and strategic thinking, right? And as we know, a lot of publication has been made around the future skills, and two of the top 3 skills are creativity and critical thinking, and you need those 2 skills in order to be innovative. Secondly, we've got, and what I refer to as technology as a team member. Consultants have termed this as the human AI partnership, which arguably sounds a lot sexier than technology as a team member. I'm a techie, so it sounded like software as a service, and it had that similar sort of feel to it. But what do I mean by we entering into this human AI partnership? And this is really to offset this idea and this concern that AI might replace jobs. But do we really know the answer? And I want to ask you that question. Do we really know the answer to that question? I don't think so, but there's a lot of research that is pointing to the fact that employees, and there's actually a paper that's been conducted. I might just share that with you, Graham, to push on to the rest of the to all of those on the call, all of us on the call. But there's been a 9-month study that shows that employees that have access to generative AI models in the workplace to help them conduct work, where the organizations are not holding them back from leveraging this technology, there's been no replacement of jobs. Instead, there's been reskilling, and there's been an increase in productivity. And I think that for me is extremely exciting. And that's the power of the human AI partnership, is that we increase our productivity at work, and we increase engagement around what we can use this technology for, and our relationship with the organization to ensure that we produce value for the organization. Graham, I just see your hand. Is there a question?
No, sorry, that was just a slip. We're getting
No
very
worries.
excited with the content here.
Fantastic. Then lastly, every employee, I believe, needs AI aptitude. We don't need to focus on the future of work. I think it's being focused on, and more people that ask the question, what does the future of work look like? The more it becomes more abstract and more conceptual, and we don't really answer the question. I think we need to focus on a new way of work. And what does that mean? This means that we need to replace our old habits with new ones. We need to almost think of ourselves as, so not think of ourselves, we need to reframe our relationship with technology, and this technology specifically. I'd like to ask you the question, like, how many of us have GPT on our phones, right? How many of us have downloaded the app and have it on our phone and access it on our mobile devices before we use it on our browsers? Coming back to that Western research versus the BRICS nations, there are more people in the West that use the ChatGPT on their browsers, on their laptops, than on their phones. But in contrast to that, there are more people in Africa, and maybe it's because of more mobile devices that are available, or more mobile devices per human beings in Africa, that is causing us as Africans to use ChatGPT on our devices more than on browsers, just from an accessibility point of view. But if your organization, if your workplace doesn't allow you to use ChatGPT through its firewall, does that stop you from installing it on your device, right? Does that actually stop you from installing it on your phone and using it to prompt the chatbot in an anonymous manner, to get an answer for your activity that you're performing at work? Or are you stopping yourself from building a new habit? I'd like to sort of go on a whim, or not necessarily go on a whim, but I'd like to be so bold as to say I don't think we can break our old habits. And there's some science behind that. It's because we've wired ourselves to work in a particular way for decades. I'm sure that if I were to ask some of us in the call right now, how many years have you been employed at your current organization? It's probably between the average of, I would say, 5 to 7 years. For the lucky ones, like you change jobs every 2 years. But if you've been working in an organization for anything between 5 to 7, or even longer, maybe 10 years, I'd like to ask you to think of how often have you changed your process of work, right? And if you haven't changed your process of work, of delivering work, of allowing too many meetings in your diary, as an example, you end of the day and you ask yourself the question, how, when will I get time to conduct work? When will I get time to actually work and not sit in meetings? But it's our habit of accepting invites into our diaries that is stopping us from doing new things. And therefore, I'd like to almost say that it's not organizations that change, it's people that change. And we have to ask ourselves the question, where do we find ourselves on this journey of changing? And what do we need to do to stop ourselves from building a new habit along this journey of AI aptitude, right? So working alongside AI, using natural language, a natural language model will be as inherent as how we work as the internet and the PC. I believe it's going to be as fundamental in the next couple of years. So skills like critical thinking and analytical judgment, complex problem solving, creativity, and originality, coupled with humanity and building that emotional intelligence into the way we interact with each other and the way we interact with these chatbots, to ensure that the output bears some level of humanity to it, are going to be our new core competencies, not just for technical roles, but I believe for roles that are customer facing and that are requiring a high degree of human engagement. All right. So as AI reshapes what we do, the human AI collaboration will be the next transformational work pattern. I firmly believe that. And it's in us, and it's our ability to work iteratively with these artificial intelligence models across the AI spectrum that will be a key skill for every single employee, not just for those that work in IT, not just those for work that work in digital or in data, but it's going to be extremely important for every single employee, those that work in contact centers, those that work as sales associates, those that work in, claims businesses as an example as well. It's going to be extremely important that we build this new capability to ensure that we are part of this next transformational pattern of work around work is going to be configured. And with that, I'd like to end the conversation today. I'd like to say thank you so much for joining. Graham, I'm going to hand back to you and to check if there are any questions. We've got about 10 minutes, so if anybody would like to also jump on, I'm not too sure if they can come off mute, but I'm very happy to have a conversation.
Well, we don't have any yet. Well, we've got one. Gabe asked, how does one get ChatGPT Plus?
That's a pretty straightforward question, or answer rather. So when you log in using either your phone or your browser, there's a settings section, and the first option is to access the settings section and then upgrade your current subscription through that option there, or that process rather. The second option is so everybody at the moment has got access to GPT 4.0, right? Meaning its most advanced model. And for those of us that are on the free tier, if you use or exhaust your 4.0 prompts for the day or for the month, you'll get prompted to upgrade. So that's the second process that you'll follow if you want to. And it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's about $20. So it works out about 399 Rand a month. So if you use it on a daily basis, if you use it as your search engine, if you use it to ensure that you are more productive at work and you can make sense of the 400 Rand, I would encourage you to do so. I think it will also give you a much more accurate output, right? So because the 4.0 model has been trained on a larger data set, the probability of fabrication of information or hallucination of information is going to be lower. And therefore, you can trust the output a lot more based on how you've prompted the chatbot as well, obviously giving it the constraints and the examples that I've given in the call today. So there's not just the cost aspect that you have to look at when making this decision. It's both the cost aspect, but also the accuracy of the output.
Thank you for that. And then we got a hand raise from Bududzani. You'd like to, I have unmuted you if you want to ask a question.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you very much. Devaan, it's such an insightful session. Thank you very much. Just a question on my side. There is, and I think you mentioned it earlier, there's still obviously the reluctance of organizations to adopt Gen AI, and maybe the fear is, I think there's been many reasons that's been cited, one being the issue about privacy and ownership of the information that's generated on AI. What do you think, what is it that can be done to sort of assist with the adoption within the organizations? That's the first question. And the second one, how do we compare globally? Is the concerns to adopt AI, also globally in other countries as well, or is it something that we're just finding in South Africa? We seem to sort of be lagging behind a little bit. And are there any industries that are leading on this?
So it's a great question. So I think what I didn't speak about today was the cost element, right? So I spoke about just the data privacy. That was one aspect, but cost is an extremely important factor to this. So you'll have to secure storage. That's one aspect of it, right? And for those of us that use your Microsoft Azure stack. If you're on, if you use Microsoft Teams, and most organizations use the Microsoft Azure stack in order to, store the email, chat on Teams, and set up meetings and those sort of things. There's an Azure stack that Microsoft will recommend you use, but it comes at a price, right? So that's a fixed price that you pay on a monthly basis, and then there's a variable price, a variable cost around the tokens that your employees consume when prompting a chatbot, and that's a variable cost that you'll have to account for on a monthly basis. So my recommendation is that you implement some form of an off-the-shelf pilot. So there's a company called Axely. I'm not paid to say this. I'm definitely like that. But I can only speak about them because I'm currently partnering with them. So I'm sharing from experience around how we can limit the cost through implementing a POC for a limited time frame, and then you use the data that you've created as a result of the implementation of the pilot to develop a much more refined financial model that helps you and the business make the right investment for your organization. I don't think there'll be one investment or one organization's circumstance will not be applicable to the next. And that all relates back to the manner in which you engage with your customers. It relates to your objectives that you want to pursue as far as embracing the technology. There's a lot of research around how this improves productivity. And we are starting to see that more organizations that leverage this technology are starting to see productivity lifts, right? As early as between, the paper that I'll share with you talks about a sales increase of 10% for over a 9-month period. But this 9-month period accounts for before GPT and then after GPT, right? So you're looking at almost like a 4.5 month on either side of the pendulum. But there are many organs. Your second question was around, I hope that helps answer question A that you asked around, how do we go about, what are the various factors that we need to consider? The second part of the question was around, what are we seeing globally around how people are adopting the technology? It's ramping up, right? So as more people start to see that others are leveraging the technology, there's a natural fear that I'm going to be left behind. So we are starting to see a lot more organizations introduce these pilot instances in their businesses. Where organizations are reluctant is a customer-facing environment where they're using customer data to, exposing customer data to the large language model because they don't want to, or they want to limit the opportunity for a data breach, essentially, right? And that's natural. You can expect that from a cybersecurity point of view and from a data security, because there's a massive reputational loss that can take place if there's a breach. And with it still being very new technology, there's always that fear that your information security officers are going to allay when it comes to implementation of the capability. That being said, a lot of organizations are using it for their internal productivity measures, and that's not just in Africa. That's a lot in the western side of the globe. There's a lot of use cases that are currently taking place where organizations are looking to extract efficiency gains from the automation capability. Hope that helps your question.
Thank you. Thanks, Devaan.
We got another great one in the chat, Devaan. So this is from John. So question 1, it's a 2-parter.
Sure.
I'm keen to introduce my kids to using AI in their everyday life. With regards to the South African Qualification Authority, any guidelines on minimum NQF levels for using Gen AI solutions effectively? So that's the first one. And then the second one is any suggestions on AI solutions capable of supplementing or performing data migration activities such as a source to target mapping?
That's
Bit of a beefy
those are
one.
two really great questions, John. Thank you so much. I don't know if I'll be able to get to both questions in the remaining 2 minutes or so, but for the first question around the education. So my kids, as an example, my kids use maybe not all my kids. I've got 3. My eldest is 8 years old, and he uses ChatGPT to generate a story, a bedtime story, and then read it to my 3-year-old. And I think it's extremely cute that he does that because he adds her name into it. And just I think it was earlier this week, it was like a Jurassic Park scenario because she's been watching a lot of National Geographic on TV. It's actually the prehistoric on Apple TV. She's been watching a lot of that. And she's been asking for a bedtime story around the Cretaceous period. So Aiden, my eldest, had used it to create a story of that nature. So I think that it's important that we introduce certain aspects of the technology to our kids to ensure that we stimulate creativity and to ensure that we stimulate thought. I think that's important. There hasn't been any direct relationship with the educational authorities yet around how we're using generative AI to influence them from that point of view. But I'm sure it's bound to happen over the next couple years. So I'm looking forward to that. John, I did see your hand go up. Is that a follow-on question that you wanted to raise? If not, that's fine. And then your second question was around data migration. The second question was around data migration. That's a really great question, right? So in my experience, the work that we've done in my current employer is that we have first sought to engineer our processes, because if you're training the model on your existing data set and you don't trust your data set as it is in its current shape and form, that means that it's almost garbage in, garbage out. So it's important that you take a holistic view of your data strategy to understand exactly where your data governance principles are, to your data management principles, to data technologies, and generative AI may fit into your data technologies. I haven't seen much value in the migration of data, but I think that there would be some use case for scraping your existing data set when you use it as a data technology, to scrape your existing data set, to federate that data set so that it's clean. You segregate it from metadata to unstructured to structured data, and you're able to then perform regression analysis to help produce a predictive or even prescriptive data model on the outset, so that you start playing in that, what's sort of classified as a cognitive analytics capability. So I hope that helps you in just answering the question. But it's a big piece of work. I don't want to, under any illusion, I don't want to say that it's an easy fix. That is you have to look at it in the holistic lens of your data strategy. And I stopped at data technologies, right? There's still the people and change component that you have to add into it around how do you ensure that you are capacitated with the right skill set to ensure that you mature along this data framework, and then deliver against the business objectives from an operations perspective on which is the last pillar of a data strategy. But it's a long journey, but it takes a deliberate business strategy to ensure that you get executive buy-in to make use of the technology from that perspective. We are over time. I'm just conscious of that and want to respect everybody's calendar as well.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Devaan, and thanks everyone for the fantastic questions. As I mentioned, I will certainly be sending the recording as a follow-up in the next day or so, as soon as it loads. And watch this space. We've got a great course, obviously, and look, hopefully this has whet some of your appetites to learn a little bit more. Thanks very much. Have a great day, everyone. Stay warm.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much. Thanks, Graham. Cheers.
Bye.